Why I chose Orthodoxy instead of Catholicism? Because I don't agree with the Spirit proceeding from the Son also. As John 15:26 says, "But when the Helper comes, whom I will send to you from the Father, the Spirit of truth who proceeds from the Father, he will bear witness about me." Christ literally says, the Spirit who proceeds from the Father. And this was in agreement at the Council of Nicaea in 325. And then in 1589, it was added in Spain to combat Arianism, emphasizing the Son's full divinity. So everybody's in agreement in 325, and almost 200 years later, you add this. I don't agree with that. I think that the Spirit proceeds from the Father only. Like Christ says, the Father is greater than I. Not greater in divinity, but a different role. Correct me if I'm wrong, right? I'm still studying this and educating myself. But to me, it makes sense. Like, I'm going to hold true to the traditions implemented or agreed upon in 325. You know, why change things almost 200 years later? I don't understand that. There's another reason I would not choose Catholicism, because of the Pope. I don't agree with a human Pope. I also think the popes have been very political in recent years. I think the popes have become more liberal as well. Like the last Pope, Pope Francis, you know, inviting Jewish people and Muslims to pray with them together, to worship together. Like, I'm not with that, man. Why can't the Pope just be Jesus Christ? And the Pope can make decisions, and nobody has the authority to overturn the decisions the Pope makes. I don't agree with that. What I do like about Catholics is that they believe the Eucharist is the full body and blood. They have confession. They have saints. They hold the Mother of God to a very high level, you know, of sainthood, like Orthodox. There's a lot in common between the two. You know, I would say Catholics and Orthodox have more in common than Orthodox and Protestants or Catholics and Protestants, right? As a former Protestant, I used to have a very big issue with Catholicism because I heard these lines from Protestants my entire life. Oh, well, Catholics think Virgin Mary is sinless. Catholics pray to saints. Catholics have idols, you know, they worship idols and they have the beads. That's an idol. And Catholics have confession. Why not just confess to Christ? You know, there's all this mess, how Protestants see Catholics. And by the grace of God, God has changed my mindset on a lot of those things. God has used certain resources and people to educate me more. So I'm not so critical and judgmental of Orthodox and Catholics and their traditions and their beliefs, thinking it's heresy, thinking it's, you know, idolatry, and making a claim as extreme as that, right? So, yeah, in Orthodox theology, the Father is the sole unoriginate source of the Trinity. The Son is begotten from the Father, right? That's a mystery. Like, how is Jesus eternal, but he's begotten from the Father, right? There's so much about God we cannot fathom in our human minds. And the Spirit proceeds from the Father. The filioque undermines this by making the Son a co-cause of the Spirit's hypostatic existence, potentially subordinating the Spirit and creating a dyad, Father-Son, as joint source, rather than a true Trinity. That's interesting, right? Then the Eastern Fathers, St. Basil the Great, St. Gregory of Nyssa, St. John of Damascus, consistently taught procession from the Father alone, while acknowledging the Spirit's temporal sending through the Son. Even Western Fathers like St. Augustine are interpreted by Orthodox as describing an energetic or economic relation, not hypostatic procession. Later Orthodox saints like St. Photius the Great, 9th century, and St. Gregory Palamas, 14th century, refuted the filioque, emphasizing distinctions like essence versus energies to maintain Trinitarian orthodoxy without it. So, this is a very deep topic. I still need to research it a lot more, and it definitely will. But for me, I've been to Mass. I wasn't a fan. I was Protestant when I went to Mass, but I'm going to stick with orthodoxy. I don't think anything would change my mind to make me jump ship to Catholicism. Just because I have a big deal with the filioque and I have a big deal with a human pope. I just don't agree with it. There's just been a lot of, that's the thing too, man. There's been a lot of mess with Catholics through history, right? Like conquering, killing people, and that's something I don't agree with as well. Praise God, you brought that to my mind. The fact that priests have to take this life of celibacy. They can't get married in Catholicism. Very few people are called to live that life. That's a very hard life. And that's why a lot of priests end up doing things with the altar boys, because they're sexually starved. This celibacy is driving them crazy. They got all this energy stored up within them and nowhere to put it, right? And they just go crazy. But in orthodoxy, the priest can have a wife, can have children. And I think that's better. I think that's okay, right? I think that should be the norm. Not every single priest cannot get married and has to be celibate in Catholicism. I don't agree with that. I think that's weird. I think that's why there's been a lot of these problems with the altar boys and stuff like that. If the priest was just allowed to have a wife and family, I think he'd be good, right? This lust and this temptation wouldn't eat him alive and make him lose his mind.